Welcome back to Create Wealth Through Franchising podcast in Kim Daly TV. In my studio today, a new friend. His name is Ron Bandick. He is from Southwest Chicagoland, and he is a franchisee with the Grout Medic. Ron, welcome to the studio of Kim Daly TV.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
I am so happy because, as I was telling Ron before we hit record, I am very intrigued with this very niche business. Those of you who've worked with the Daily Coach, you know that I often say the riches are in the niches. And this is one of those niches that as a consumer, I'm obsessed with it because I hate grout and I love clean grout. It's so hard to clean grout. And as a business owner, I'm equally in love with this because there's like nobody else out there that I even know that does this. So very intriguing conversation. And that's why we've invited Ron to be our guest today. But we're not here to talk just about grout. We want to hear Ron's story. So Ron, take us back to the beginning of your franchising journey. What was happening in your life when you answered the call to franchising?
Okay. Well, yeah, my background is in accounting and finance, and I've worked both in public accounting, private industry, and before I got into the Grout Medic, I actually was working as a controller for a commercial realtor, and our niche was primarily reselling gas stations and gas station franchises. BP was a big customer, but several others. Foreclosed home auctions, but then that business got bought by a lender that was providing homes, and so the business really had shrunk down, and they didn't need me anymore. And I had always wanted to do something, but wasn't sure what. I didn't want to do accounting and finance, and so I started exploring franchising, and the Grout Medic came up as one of the options, and here I am.
Did you work with a consultant for this to come up as one of the options? Because I'm not thinking that it's something you saw in Entrepreneur 500 and said, oh, yes, grout cleaning. That sounds like a great business.
Yeah, I had reached out to both a broker for just traditional businesses, not necessarily franchises, but also a franchise broker. And we started to go through that process and had identified three businesses initially. Grout Medic was one of those. I did due diligence on two of the three. I couldn't even tell you what the third one was. But as I was going through that process, I reached out to a gentleman who owned the territory that I was living in at the time, and just to, really get information, but found that he was older and had gotten remarried and was looking to sell his business. And so I ended up actually buying his territory from him and working with him a little bit to kind of, get trained and get started.
So you were able to buy him out as he was transitioning out. You came in?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. And the area that I own actually is the Grout Medic franchise was started in Naperville, which is where we're based. And so the area that I bought was our first territory. The corporate office used to be here. It's since been purchased by somebody else.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm still curious. So you're an accountant. That's what you've done. So what was it about owning your own business that attracted you to entrepreneurship? Like, because it's not, especially coming from a stereotypical, and maybe you're not stereotypical accountant, but the stereotypical accountant mindset really isn't like looking to be out on the bleeding edge of risk, right? So how did you bridge this in your mind, or are you just not the stereotypical accountant? You kind of always had something inside of you that said, I want to one day own my own business.
I did always have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. The accounting firm that I initially went to work for focused on family-owned businesses and smaller businesses. So that was, always part of the attraction. And, I was good at what I did, but, always wanted to, felt like, you see some of the business and you see a lot of it on the accounting and finance side, but to be able to, operate all aspects of the business and the challenges of that was actually, intriguing to me. So I found that, trying to do something on my own and being the person to drive the results, and also felt like, I was working very hard. And if I was going to work, that hard, if I was doing it for myself, I would reap the benefits of that.
Choose your heart. Exactly. Exactly. I love that. So, when you were working for the commercial realtor and you were buying and selling these gas stations, did you ever bump into scenarios where the gas station was failing so that like in your mind you were like, wow, like buying an established business for sale could be a risky proposition? Or did you all of your experiences in the buying and selling of those businesses aid in your mindset that when you were ready you felt more in control or more knowledgeable because you had seen so many transactions?
Yeah, I think, it was more seeing transactions in a prior life too. I worked for a company that was acquisitive. And so I got involved in some of the due diligence there. And so, just knowing that the business had been in place for some time and had operated successfully, did give me a little bit more comfort than starting, completely from scratch. Although I was ready to do that. It just seemed like given the opportunity there. Plus, I knew a good area. It was the area that I lived in. And so that those all came into the decision making.
It's kind of amazing how the stars aligned for you. You saw exactly where I was going with that line of question. So you were in this, as an accountant in an industry where you were watching transactions between buyers and sellers of businesses. And then when you turned to own a business, one of the options served up to you was a business that you could walk into and buy existing customers and cash flow and, take it over. You weren't building it from scratch. And that very rarely happens. And then for it to be like the area that you live in makes it even better, right? Because you have relationships and a network of people that already know, like, and trust you. And that just helps kind of to lift the brand right out of the gate even more. So seems very fortuitous of you, and or you had a really good franchise consultant who really did some good homework to find out that that resale was
Well, yeah,
available.
no, actually just kind of stumbled into the resale opportunity. But it was, also interesting because while it was an existing business, the gentleman I bought it from had kind of checked out. And so, they had a history and it was successful, but, he wasn't really actively trying to grow the business. And so, not long after we closed, I was down to one technician. So I wasn't starting from scratch, but it was pretty close to scratch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you had to still infuse your own money and your own, training and knowledge into it. I love that. And that often happens. People will come to me and say, well, I don't think I'm interested in starting from scratch. I want to buy cash flow. And listen, I'm all for selling a business, right? Like I tell all of my candidates, I want you to build this franchise to sell it. So I'm not opposed to people being the ones buying it, but I'd rather you be the one selling it for the high multiple than paying the high multiple, right? And there are some cases where that doesn't make sense. If you're of a certain age or you need to create cash flow like immediately, buying, being willing to pay for that cash flow could be the best outcome. But for most people, you put a lot of money in that upfront cost and you still need more money in order to then grow the business, right? That's the part that it's hard to predict. How much more money do I need to really grow this? And you're diving into the deep end of the pool and you have no swimming ability, right? I mean, you just got to like struggle to stay afloat until you figure all the things out versus when you start from scratch, meaning you buy the business, the franchise as a brand new startup for your area. You are going to the first swimming lesson and you're, wading into the shallow end of the pool and you're learning all the basics of how to stay afloat, if you will, before you swim out to the deep end, right? And by the time you get out to the deep end, you know exactly what to do. You know exactly how it's going to go because you've been trained and supported and you have confidence and skill that got you to that level. So there's a time and a place for everything, but I love it. I love the story, and I love that that worked out for you the way that it did. It was kind of the best of everything because it sounds like you probably didn't have to pay a huge multiple, but you also didn't have to like be the first one bringing the grout medic to your area.
Right, right. There was
Yeah,
some
somebody just sort of
some
maybe bought
history.
down the first year for you. Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's take it from there then. So I'm very curious, what were the characteristics as an accountant coming in and thinking about owning a business? What were the characteristics of this business that you loved and the characteristics of the owner's role? Because I'm imagining that, and I could be totally wrong, there were roles as a business owner that you were like, I'm really going to have to stretch myself and grow into that role. Although the other roles of business ownership maybe naturally fit right in with the skills and the background that you had.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, was certainly a hurdle for me in going through this whole process was, selling. I mean, that was not something I was particularly comfortable with and, more introverted and the, more traditional accountant kind of thing. But this felt comfortable in that, I wasn't out cold calling people. People were calling us looking for our services. And, it was a pretty easy transition to be able to first learn the business, learn what our services were, how we could help people and communicate that. I think I'm pretty good at communicating with people, but communicating with somebody who's already looking for what we do was a lot more comfortable than just trying to, go out and cold call.
The warm lead is always the best. And those are generated through SEO, I'm guessing through search engine optimization, pay-per-click ads, things like that.
Yeah, yeah, especially these days. Yeah, we do a lot with our website. We do still do a little bit of direct mail, and that does work for us, in a kind of a little bit different market, somebody who may not, have an urgent issue where there's leaking in their shower. They'll see our ad and they realize they have some mold and they'll give us a call. So it's a kind of nice compliment to what we do.
Okay. So and that's exactly where I was going. I was making an assumption. I let you lead the way, though, that, in business ownership, I kind of define it. There are three primary roles, right? Business development is always first, because if every business had all the customers it wanted, no business would ever fail. So owners, number one, always have to be salespeople. Always, always, always. You don't have to start that way. You either have to hire it if you're not it, or you have to be willing to grow and become it. So there you go. There's that. And then the second is usually HR, like hiring, training, leading teams of people, right? So I'm imagining in your business, Ron, that you're not the one doing the grout work, are you?
I am not. No, I mean, when I first bought the business, I did a little bit of it to learn what we do and how long it takes so that I could figure out pricing, things like that. But yeah, I have actually, and talking about people, I've been lucky. The one technician that I mentioned, he was with the old owner. He's still with me. And he now does a little bit of technician type work, but he's also doing sales for me. And then I hired an individual in early 2012, which was not long after I bought the business, and he's still with me. So he's my senior technician. And so he does training for new people that we have coming in.
Holy smokes. Okay, so we didn't say that. So when did all this go down? So how long ago did you invest in this business?
Yeah, it was the end of 2011.
Wow. So you've been at it for 14 years, 13 years?
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. Okay. All right. So this is good. I should have asked that up front. I'm so sorry. So you have a team of how many now?
We have 6 technicians, have a couple subcontractors that we work with to do natural stone restoration, which we do, but we don't get enough to bring that in-house. And then we partner with a company that does tub reglazing. They can reglaze walls or shower pans, and we do some work for them.
So if somebody wanted basically like a whole bath remodel, you don't have to just say, no, we don't do that. You have the subs take the job and bring other people in to do that
Yeah,
kind of
it's
work.
worked out well because, especially like with natural stone, some people don't even know that they have natural stone. They just see that they have tile.
I'd be
And
like, I am smelling, I don't know, what is it?
yeah, and can require
Fix it.
different things to fix it. So we can provide a full solution for that, they don't have to be a general contractor and find a couple people to solve their problem. Like a primary bathroom might have stone, but their kid's bathroom is ceramic, and we can deal with both.
Right, right, right. Okay. So, and going back to my point, it's sales, business development is always the first skill set for an owner. HR is second, sometimes first, depending on the business and depending on the owner. And then the third one, which everybody wants, is that kind of CEO executive function of running a business, right? And everybody wants that. But when I'm doing a consultation, I always tell my candidates, you can't put CEO first because you don't have a business to operate, right, and run efficiencies through if you don't have customers and or people to be leveraged through. So you got to pick one or the other first. I mean, people are like, wait a minute, right? I just want to be a CEO, right? And then, of course, there's all the myths out there on that, like, well, I'm buying a franchise. What do you mean I have to go sell something? Like I'm a lift buster. And so I'm like, well, I'm happy to tell you, be the first one to tell you that owning a business is all about selling a customer. So step up if you want to own a business, right? And so when we invest in a franchise, what we're doing for the listener who isn't aware, what you're doing is you're being told who the customer avatar is. You have a definition, you have ideas about how to attract them, whether it's marketing or going out and networking in the community, and you're trained through franchisor training on the approach and how to go out. But then you've got to muster up the courage and the boldness to go out and actually do it, and kiss the babies and shake the hands and become the mayor of the town, and whatever niche within your community is where you would find those referral sources that could be active for you in leading you to the end customer. And then again, if you want to be the CEO and you don't want to be trading your time for money, you always need people, right? People are like, I don't want to hire anybody. I'm like, well, then you're going to become a solopreneur and buy yourself a job. Is that really what you want? Well, no. I'm like, okay, then you got to get over your mindset of not wanting to hire people. And so that's the second. And then when you're doing the other two effectively, then you actually have a business that you get to, strategize for growth and be the visionary of, and like build the culture of, and all the things that go with that executive function. And it stops people in their tracks. It's one of the very first questions I ask in consultation, because I need people to start thinking like a business owner. And top of that funnel always is sales. So, and let's talk about that, because before we hit record, you mentioned that now in your business, you're finding more time to go out and to meet realtors and be the networker. So as your business has evolved, talk a little bit about, have you been doing that? Are you looking to do it more for growth? Has it become a necessity because for whatever reason, the marketing or SEO is just not produced leads like it used to?
Yeah, I think, we really kind of got to a point, and I was doing all of the estimates and then the technicians doing the work. So I was kind of, the general manager and the salesperson. And I felt like I'd gotten to a point where I couldn't grow the business any further doing that. And had always kind of, recognized that was an issue, but felt like we got to a point where I could, start to step back. And so that was where I brought in the technician who was still with me from the purchase. So he had done a little bit of sales for the old owner. We really kind of got out of that as we got into some more of the technology, which wasn't really his thing. But I brought him on to that role and got him trained on some of the technology that we were using at that point to get him out doing the sales calls and the estimates. Worked really well because he obviously knew our pricing, he knew what had to happen, and was very good with people. So it was a really good transition, and that allowed me to step back and start to focus on more of the networking. And we get a lot of referrals from plumbers, because everybody has a leak they call a plumber, and a lot of times it's grout. Also realtors, when they're getting ready to show a house or list a house, we can come in and for a very small amount of money, really change the way like an entryway looks or a bathroom. And so, I was able to start to pull myself out and focus on that, which has allowed us to continue to grow the business.
Yes, referrals are free leads. I mean, they're not free in that it costs you time to go build relationships, but they're the gift that just keeps on giving, right? And especially if you go back to those referral sources and say, look what we did for your referral, and they're so happy, and, try to incentivize that behavior.
We have a few realtors, especially who, it's a part of their process to give our contact information out and have us come in. And sometimes it's a smaller project, sometimes it's a bigger project, but we usually can have some kind of an effect that's a positive.
Money is money. It's all good. It's all flowing into your bank account. That's what we love, Ron. Okay, and what you were speaking to, you were in it and then you felt ready to grow, and is the struggle of growth, right? So people think when you're out there, I'm going to own a business, I'm going to get it up and running, and then I'm going to step back and just collect the money, right? Well, the owner that you need to be from probably 0 to 1 million, or let's just call it, we're using money as like the point. It could not be 1 million. It could just be a point in your growth. But we'll just say 0 to 1 million is one mindset. Probably, 1 million to 5 million is another mindset. And then 5 to 10 million and more is another mindset. And so you can get comfortable where you are, but you're going to stay there, right? As the owner, it's your job to keep growing your mindset, expanding your awareness, recognizing I'm the bottleneck. We've heard that before on this very podcast, right? Other franchisees we've interviewed said I was the bottleneck, right? Because I wanted control and I couldn't let go of control. You might have heard that recently, actually, in an episode. I remember recording it. But so now, you're like, I'm becoming aware that I need to grow. And so you have to keep growing. Now, in your case, Ron, with the Grout Medic, does your leadership encourage and support and even coach you through those transitions? Like, hey, this is a point where you should probably think about hiring a salesperson? Or is it more of an internal feeling for you?
Well, it's interesting, with the history I have, the old ownership really didn't provide us a whole lot of counseling or things like that. But we've been acquired by Premium Service Brands, which has 9 different home service brands, and they are much more active in that and have programs and training, and we have monthly brand calls where we talk about that. And so there's, certain levels that they've kind of identified for our business where, you need to kind of know to start thinking about what those next milestones are and what you need to do to achieve them.
Yes, I can imagine it has. You've been around for a very long time, and this was an emerging franchisor that probably didn't have the resources to be able to even grow from the franchisor's level. And then Premium Service, which is a home services franchisor, came in and acquired the Grout Medic and brought in all of their premium services to these franchisees. Imagine, like, I'm sure it just feels like a aha moment for you. Like the light is shining all over you because they have Paul Flick and everything he's built. It's very impressive, and it has lots of systems to it and the technology pieces to it and the knowledge and how to build and support a franchise organization, not to mention the money that it takes to actually be a proper franchisor. And in speaking to that, to the listener, that's one of the things, again, that when you come to Kim Daly, like, I don't work with every franchise because 97% of them aren't worth your time. 97% of all franchisors will never even get to 100 units. 100 units doesn't make it a franchise, people. 500 units. 500 units for the average franchise is about where, as consumers, we start waking up and going, oh, what is this thing? I'm seeing it everywhere. 500 units. So if 97% of all companies that become franchises don't even make it to 100 units, are they worth your time and money, your hard-earned life savings, if you're trying to build and scale a franchise brand and maybe exit for some multiple because of the brand equity? I don't think so. So therein lies, why Kim Daly only plays with that top 3%. So when you come to me and you say, well, what if I bring a franchise to you that you don't represent? And I say, have at it. Bring it to the table. Because I know when you get inside and I show you what an A-plus franchisor looks like and feels like, here Ron is now with an A-plus franchisor, but he wasn't in the beginning, and he's validating there's a difference.
Oh yeah, it's the pendulum is swung completely to the other side.
He didn't know what he didn't know, but now he knows, and he'll never go back.
Yeah,
Because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
absolutely.
I love that. Okay, so you're in for like 13 years now, coming on 14 years. So talk to us a little bit about what you see as your future growth goals. Like, are any of your kids, do you have kids? Are they involved in the business? Are you looking to build and sell it? What are you thinking? Are you ever going to retire?
Yeah, actually, kind of working through that. I have 4 boys, and my youngest is right now, working at Starbucks, and so I've talked to him about whether he'd be interested, and he's been out with me on a few sales calls. He actually went out with my senior technician, and so we're trying to figure out whether that's something that we're looking into. Still in the early stages. But also my franchise agreement is up in 2029, and so I'll be in my mid 60s, trying to figure out, do I want to sign up for another 10 years? If I'm working with my son, I can make that work. Otherwise, yeah, I probably am, approaching a time when I might want to think about selling, and so I'm kind of working through those issues right now.
And there are really, really good business coaches out there. I actually have a referral if you want one, Ron, that can really help you back end in from 2029, like what you should be doing now to be able to sell for the value that you want to sell it for versus arriving at the time and being like, oh my God, I want to sell my business this year. And you haven't done the things that would allow you to position it in a buyer's mind for maximum exit strategy, for money. So if you want that referral, I'm happy to give that to you. Actually, I have a couple of people, but for the listener out there, you can be as intentional as you want to be at these junctures in your business, the resources are there and they're all within franchising. In fact, the resources that I provide for exit strategy coaching are actually business coaches that are part of a franchise. So it's all within our little industry of franchising, our big industry. It's really good. Yeah. And I love that. I again, common theme, you the listener, if you follow me, you've heard on this show is that legacy piece where a lot of dads are bringing daughters and sons into their businesses because when you dare to step out and follow your dreams, you are leaving a trail behind you that our kids, Ron, you can second this. They don't always do what we tell them to do, but they do what they see us doing. True?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
If they did what we told them to do, we wouldn't have to yell at them. There would be no parenting here. They always do what they see us doing. We are their role models. And so when you dare to become that entrepreneur or franchisepreneur, then you are leaving that trail and the kids are very likely to pick that up and run with it. So good for you. So for that listener who's out there, you've certainly had a lot of lessons along the 13 years. I'd be curious, like, what do you think are some of the biggest lessons you've learned about yourself? I always think business ownership is the best personal development game you could ever play with yourself, right? And to the extent that you're willing to grow personally and professionally, then you realize that financial return. What are some of the biggest personal development or life lessons you've learned about Ron over the last 13 years of building this business? Do you have any?
Well, I think, it certainly has helped me, just become more outgoing as we talked about, like with the sales side, really to be successful, I had to do that. And I think I've done pretty well with that. I would also say that, just being organized and how to manage both activities in the business, but also people. I had managed people in prior lives before, but it's a little bit different with managing the technicians that we're working with. And I've had success, I think, with that, with the ability to attract and retain, good people, and really learn that that is really important. To the success of the business. When I find somebody good, I want to make sure that we keep them so that, we're not spending time finding people and getting them trained and, all of that. It's been very helpful. And I think, figuring that out for myself and, there's some aspects of that then fan out into other parts of my life that have been helpful.
I think you should take a lot of pride in, being able to attract the right people and retain them in your business because that's not common. A lot of people struggle there, blaming it more on the people in their market or the economy at the time or whatever the thing is. But as the mindset coach, I 100% believe that we are the creators of that and that you attract people to you. And so when I find owners who tell me that, their retention is very high in their company, it makes me lean in and smile really hard because that means that you're doing something really good. And do you take pride in that because you're following your dream, you've literally created jobs for people like you're putting, a paycheck in somebody's bank every week or 2 weeks because you dared to follow your dream and now you're able to help them support their families?
Yeah, absolutely. It feels really good to, have people. And actually the one gentleman I've mentioned a few times who was with the old owner, his son actually is now working for us too. It does feel really good to be able to provide what is a decent job and allows these people to raise their families and take care of their own lives.
It's so good. And so you went from this accountant who was like probably going to be like, I'm never going to sell anything in my life to now you're comfortable networking, talking to people. I mean, that's massive internal growth. An employer in your local community, creating jobs, building a legacy for one family where now father and son are working together. And maybe you'll even be a father son working together as you start to transition to the next phase of your life. These are the intangible but almost the most tangible parts of franchising or of business ownership that I believe franchising affords so many people. And I will add this to you because there's no way that you've been in business for 13 years without building a vision and waking up and showing up for that vision every single day. You don't just accidentally stay in business for 13 years. It's all very intentional. And so there's personal development in that, in being able to build a vision, believe in yourself enough to follow through, and then to show up every day, not just when it's good. Because in 13 years, there's some good days and some bad days. There's a pandemic in there. There's a recession in there. There's a whatever the heck our economy is doing right now in there right now. There's all these things. And so you don't just accidentally stay in business for 13 years. So I'm going to give you a big fat pat on the back on that one, that the vision that you're waking up with and showing up for every single day is what's allowing you to carry this business and is what will take you through, whether it's 2029 or beyond that. If your own son gets involved, that's what drives the entire thing. Would you agree?
I would. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so good. So, for those listeners who are on the sideline, this man has 13 years of experience as a franchisepreneur. Ron, what advice do you have for those people who are listening, thinking, should I get into this franchising thing or not?
Well, I think, doing your due diligence, understanding, the details of the business that you're looking at, understanding the market, like for us, there are other people who do what we do. Call those people when you're in the due diligence process. Understand who your competition is. I see that in our system. There's some markets that are very competitive. There are some that are, less competitive, and that can have an effect on how successful the business is. And really take your time, understand, I think, what it is you want to accomplish personally, because that's one thing that owning the business has also allowed me, is just a lot more control and flexibility over my schedule and my life. Working really hard now. It's certainly hard to own your own business and run your own business, but you feel like everything that you do is benefiting you and your family. And, you do have some control over that. I mean, if I wanted to really push, we could be bigger than that, but I'm comfortable with the growth that we've had. And it's allowed me to have a good balance with the work and, other aspects of my life. Understand what you're looking for.
And that's the freedom that comes, right? Not everybody's in it to go build a multi-million-dollar empire, right? Sometimes you get to a point where you're like, money is just money and I have enough. And now I want balance. I want to not feel like I'm just, grinding every day, and enjoy the freedom that business ownership should provide. So, so well said. Well, for those who are on the sideline, this is your call to action. If you're tired of just listening to the Daily Coach and all of her guests talk about the freedoms that franchising can afford you, it's time to get in the game. So all you have to do in order to work with Kim Daly is follow the link in the description below. I will personally reach out to you within 24 hours. So follow that link right now. Ron, thank you so much for being our special guest here today.
You're very welcome. It was a great time.
A super pleasure to meet you. And don't forget that my name is Kim Daly, and I want to be your franchise consultant and your daily coach.